The Blokebusters podcast is a proud member of the Pod Bros Network, where you can find us as well as other excellent podcasts such as Sarcasm City, Worst Millennials, and Late Night Gamers at podbros.com. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy another episode of the Blokebusters podcast.
Tonight's story is somewhat unique and calls for a different kind of introduction.
Who's going off? Today we are canceling the apocalypse!
Wait a minute. You ain't heard nothing yet.
And this is?
Lilu Dallas Multipass.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Houston, we have a problem.
Have you tried turning it off and on again?
Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room.
Now, where was I?
Hello and welcome to what is probably going to be a rather subdued episode of Blokebusters today. I have with me my good friend Pat and Honor, and we are going to be discussing Stan Lee, who recently passed away. And so yeah, thank you guys for coming on and doing this.
Oh, no problem.
It's going to be brilliant if you guys are going to speak in unison throughout the entire episode. Wonderful.
It'd be great.
that is the plan, yeah.
We're going for Echoalia.
So yes, we're recording this on the 18th of November, and last week Stan Lee did indeed pass away, and it was something that I guess wasn't really shocking to hear that he had, but was deeply depressing to know that he had gone. So,
well, did you all find it depressing? Because I feel like it was more of a celebration overall. Because I don't think I saw so many people who were like sad to see him go, but like everyone all agreed like this is a celebration of a man who lived 95 years.
I actually thought he was been dead for years, so I feel awful. I didn't realize. Yeah, I killed him a long time ago, and then holy shit, he literally actually died last week. So I'm catching up, guys. I'm catching up to you. So I'm not quite. Yeah.
So you saw every single cameo in the Marvel film. He was like a Sesame Street puppet or something.
Well, I just thought he filmed all at once right before he died. Like they just ran through and they just inserted him, and then and then that's it. I almost completely wrong on this. So I apologize to the Stan Lee estate.
Don't worry, they haven't gone the way of Star Wars just yet. Then give it a little time, and then they'll start CGI him. And
I mean, the Peter Cushing of comic book. Yeah, he's coming back. Guardians of the Galaxy 3, 4. Yeah, don't worry about it. Now that James Gunn's gone, they can put Stan Lee right in there as an actual character.
Well, who knows? We might master the art of the uncanny valley with him.
But he was 95. Let's be fair. It was to be expected at some point, and he wasn't failing health, I believe. In fact, this year it was his last year at MegaCon. We have a big convention here in Orlando, and they said this was going to be the last time because he was retiring from making public appearances because basically he's in poor health. The guy was, he had to be shuffled around. Not as bad as Tim Curry. He's not the drooler in a wheelchair like Tim Curry is, who's hidden behind the curtain like the fucking Oz, the great and powerful. He wasn't that bad, but he was getting to the point that he knew he had to slow down, and well, he did. He full stopped.
Yep.
He did, but it was still amazing how engaging he was. Even at 95.
He was. Yeah, I can't.
Amazing.
I am not going to have all my faculties tonight. I'm telling you right now. I'm like 2 years away from shitting my pants already. So this guy managed to keep all his faculties at 95. He was sharp as a tack. It's amazing. That's an amazing feat these days, considering Alzheimer's happens to every third person.
No, I still the thing. For me, like, talking about the legacy and all that kind of stuff, the thing that was really touching to me to see, for me being a comic fan and all that, I occasionally saw Stan Lee putting out tweets all the time that were like funny or stupid or whatever, because he's just Stan Lee, always putting crap out there. But this one video they put so there's somebody who runs his Twitter account. There's, of course, like I don't think he's up to date on the most recent technologies, but the person who was running the account, he posted a video and he said, just so you all know, this is something that Stan record. We just caught him off key. We weren't recording for a bit. We weren't doing anything. I just recorded this while he was just sitting there and he was just talking about the fans. And it was this really, really touching video about how the fans just continue to give him energy, and yet the fans also like not just giving him energy, but the fact that he gives so much back to them and they give so much back. It's like goes back and forth. He said like it's the one thing that kept him going for years and years.
Oh yeah,
to know that like the fans could take so much joy in him as he in them. You know, it was just really kind of cool. It's like, wow, even just a few days ago, that's how or just a week or two ago, that's how he still felt about his place in life.
Exactly, and just wait till he start going through his phone and he find all that footage of him in a seedy cosplay strip club, you know, just passing out $1 bills.
No, that's just Deadpool.
Scarlet Witch. Yeah, right next to Deadpool. But yeah, it was a symbiotic relationship with his audience. You're absolutely right, Patrick. It was a symbiotic relationship between. So energy was definitely going back and forth, and that really, I think, that obviously kept them going for years and years and years. And that's amazing. That's an amazing thing to achieve. To have that kind of stature for that long.
At 95 years old, you'd be able to say like, I love my fans, but I need to just take a step back. I feel like he could have done that at like 80, and he could have gone off the map like Steve Ditko did. Steve Ditko, he's like, I'm in my 70s. I'm out. He was done. He was out. Stan Lee's like, I got another round.
To prep for this show, and I'll give a shout out to it. There's a great not a great documentary. There is a documentary on Stan Lee's life on Amazon Prime. You can go watch it right now. It's called With Great Power: The Stan Lee Story. It's from 2008. Now keep in mind, you're interviewing 2008 people like Brett Ratner, Paris Hilton. So please forgive some of the people they fucking talk to. And Patrick Stewart in a porn star mustache. You definitely have to see it for that, if nothing else. But after I watched it, I watched this whole guy's life, and they go through the whole story, and he's still puttering around. I felt like the laziest asshole on the planet. I mean, this guy is constantly working. I struggled to get out of bed this morning just to watch the damn thing to prep for this show. I got to give a lot of credit for that. It's inspiring just to keep moving, I guess, because this guy really worked, and he loved doing what he did, and that's all you can ask for, I guess, right?
Well, talk about like that. Remember, I mentioned that video. In the video, he said like, people say like, well, why don't you ever retire? He's like, why would I ever retire from the one job I just get the most joy out of? Yeah. Like he didn't think of it as work. He's like, I get to just go in and just screw off and do weird things with people, and people love it. He got to the point where he could do that, where he had enough money. He was a figurehead, and he really just could just pop in and out. He wasn't like he blew all his, like a homeless guy in the street type of thing, tempering out his career. He still had a venue and an outlet to be creative, and had the money and the lifestyle to support that. But just think like not only like, I want to say like 3 or 4 years ago, he was still putting out TV shows.
I'm not going to be doing that at 95. I'm not doing shit.
Old. Yeah. He put out TV shows at 90.
Yeah, I'm not doing any of that. No. I'm down. I'm not going to be podcasting at that point.
He did that. Like I said, I came into comics later in life, and to see the characters I've grown to really love out of Marvel, to realize that they all come from Stan Lee. So like for me, Stan Lee, he's like, I feel dumb saying this because all the comic fans refer to him as this. He's Grandpa Stan. He is. He's that kooky uncle that you just can't help but love. You're like, oh, it's Stan Lee. Oh, come here. You might say something racist or something weird, but you're just like, daggone it, it's you. I gotta love what you put out there. But I always appreciate, like, even how stupid and corny his jokes were. I always loved it.
Well, let's back up a second. Let me ask you guys, what was the first time you realized at what age you were when you were aware of Stan Lee, not the characters he created, like the actual person himself? Like, when was the awareness? When did you realize this guy? Like, what was it a TV show? Was it a public appearance? What was your entry point to actually the guy himself, not the characters he created?
Well, I can tell you mine. It's actually my favorite cameo that I've ever seen him in. Okay. And it would be Mallrats.
That was your first Stan Lee exposure?
That was the first time I had any idea who Stan Lee was.
Really? How old were you when that?
I think I ended up seeing that when I was about 13, 14.
Okay, that's all right. So, and Patrick, what was your first?
Spider-Man and His Friends, where he played the most.
And that's actually mine too. That was the first when he came on and said, "This is Stan Lee," and then he did the narration. That's when I was there. Okay, here's the guy behind what we're watching. And you're right. So Patrick and I go, yeah, Paul was a little late. You're a little, in fact, and that's really sad, Paul. You got to get that from a Kevin Smith film. Really? Is that that's how you?
Hey, I like Kevin Smith.
Well, I'm hot and cold, Kevin Smith. We're not going to discuss that, but I thought you would have. I guess you were in England. You didn't see Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. Did they show that over there? Like, what was the cartoon scenario over there for Marvel?
Not a huge amount. We got the X-Men cartoon that had one of the most catchy tunes in the world. But yeah, we didn't really get much of it. That'll be the one.
An animation that moved every 2 days, just frame.
Yeah,
that's interesting. Okay, so you were a little late to the game. I think maybe because it was a geographical, Jesus Christ, issue for you because you weren't here in America. But for us, for Patrick and I, that was the first exposure to. And then he would appear. You'd start seeing him, on TV. He did a lot of obviously did a lot of TV and a lot of intros, a lot of stuff.
It's funny you phrase that as like, what was your first exposure? Like that was my exposure, but I didn't understand. Like, what's the big deal? Why is this guy narrating? Why is he keeping like, I'm Stan Lee? I'm like, what's the big deal? Why do I care if it's Stan Lee? And then as you got more into it, you're like,
right.
Oh, Grandpa Stan Lee's on the scene.
Grandpa Stan.
He's got to announce his presence. Behold, everyone, it is me.
But he was a great narrator too. I think
he was.
He was a really great narrator. Just
I think he wasn't a great narrator. He was a great salesman.
All right, so let me correct that. Yes, he was a very good salesman. Obviously.
Very good salesman. Yes. He knew how to market.
And he constantly was pimping. He was definitely.
He was.
Go ahead.
I was about to say my favorite thing that he ever did, like to pimp stuff out. He did like the scene where he's like on the couch where he's like, "Hello, everybody."
Yes, I remember looking into that because someone posted an article that just been like, by the way, just in case you weren't aware, and it was just this picture of him. Apparently, I love the story behind that because they came to him and said, "Hey, do you want to do this?" And he said, "Yes." And then the people at Marvel said, "No, obviously he's not going to do it." And he said, "Yes, I am." And so
he just got on the couch and spread out like, "Hello."
Everybody likes the Grandpa Stan Lee now, but I honestly, my favorite Stan Lee look has to be 70s Stan Lee with the fucking sideburns and the black and silver hair and the sunglasses, and he looks like he's just hanging out at the Playboy Mansion in the grotto area. He's just got that look. He looks like Hefner's. He did very Playboyish, and he looked like Hefner's, other nephew or something or cousin. He looks like that's where he should be, but he had just such a great look in the 70s. It was very hustler, very pimp, very salesman-y. Showman type look for him. He's
never really changed. He's kept the look pretty consistent
the hair gets gray and he switched over to those dad sweaters, So he had to shift over when the sex appeal starts to go. But definitely had an appeal to him in the 70s. Hey, some great photos of him.
70 years with his wife, man. Something had to work outside the money, hopefully.
I don't know. It's a shame. Yeah, she died. Well, she died last year, am I correct? She was 95. She was. Yeah. They both died at the same age. That's incredible. So anyway, and then we're married how long? 70 years?
70 years.
Damn, that's amazing.
It's insane.
Something else I'm not doing.
You ever hear how they met?
It was in the story, and I forget.
I still think it's a crazy story. So Stanley got set up on a blind date, and he ran into Joan. And he's like, "Joan is the most beautiful woman I've ever met." He blew off his blind date. He started to hang out with Joan. But here's the thing. Joan was married. And they actually grew to really appreciate each other to the point where, like, why don't we get married? So they went to Reno, got a divorce, and then that same day they got married. And they stayed together.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. All right, so Stan got wanted, and he got.
Yeah, and then also the character of Mary Jane Watson is based off of her.
That is true. So Gwen Stacy's based on the look of his wife, and then Mary Jane is based on the personality of his wife.
Right. And when Stan Lee died, I bet somewhere in the world Jack Kirby went, "Good."
Ow.
Say what you want, but there was always the underside of Stan Lee. He had a bunch of stuff, that would kick up some dirt over the years. I mean, he was able to overcome it, obviously, and just with his enthusiasm. I think he's a good guy overall. Let's clarify. I'm not, he wasn't being shady, but there was credit issues. There was some other stuff, and he was the master showman and had the most charisma. So he's just the guy who was just the head tip of the spear on that. But yeah,
that was in his early years. He got really, he was the salesman. He let his personality get ahead of him. And then as years rolled on, I feel like, I came to Stan Lee years and years later into his life. So like in his 70s, I would have knew him. I feel like as he got older, he started like, I should give credit. And so like he really did. Like, as years went on, he's like, it was Ditko, it was Walter Simonson, it was Jack Kirby. He was big on promoting those names. And I still remember, like, even to his final interviews, he always tried to give credit to those artists that helped him to create those iconic characters. Now, I didn't even think, I remember seeing one interview, he's like, you know what, I probably, put too much shame or put too much identity on myself. And he started going by the title of I am the co-creator. He never said he was the creator anymore. He always referred to himself as the co-creator.
Exactly.
Yeah, although there's the story of him meeting Roy Thomas 2 days before he died, and they're talking about stuff, and then he signed off basically by saying, "Take care of my boy," and talking about Spider-Man. So I think he probably would take ownership of Spider-Man over everything else, I think.
What was your first exposure to a Marvel character? Like, how old?
That's a good question. I mean, obviously, as I said, I had the X-Men cartoon, which I loved. So that was probably
yours was X-Men.
Yeah, I think X-Men would be the first Marvel thing that I, at the very least, thinking back on it, that I was able to say that's Marvel. So
okay,
yeah.
Patrick, what was your
Shocker? Spider-Man.
Okay, yeah, and that was mine too. I was for Halloween Spider-Man, of course, with that shitty mask that you just sweat in, which was terrible, and then pass out. And also, I had Spider-Man underoos, guys.
Oh,
in fact, and I'm still wearing them right now in honor of this podcast and Stan Lee. They barely fit, but let me tell you, I got them on. It's not pretty, guys.
Just don't take those off. They'll take them off.
Yeah. Spider-Man underoos were the best. I had a bunch of different, but I remember, Spider-Man was a big deal too. I really liked Spider-Man. I think it was the color palette, the red and blue. I think there's that. Obviously the powers. And they had fun villains. Because if you watch that shitty '70s one with the fun theme song, and they had a lot of fun villains on that one. The Lizard and Kraven and all these other idiots. So that's what I kind of grew up. That was my entry point for Marvel, I think, was Spider-Man.
You brought up a funny thing. There's something to be said about when you nail the character's design at the first go. Spider-Man has he's had a few costume changes, but man, yeah, just a few. But the red and blue has just remained constant. Yeah. There's no change. Like, you nailed the design the first time, and you take them out of that, you're like, but you got to put them back in it.
And it's iconic enough, even if you have if you just show a circle and then have the red and the webbing on it, everybody knows it's Spider-Man. Like, you don't even have to, you don't have to see his face or even the eyes. Everybody knows that. That's like Mickey Mouse and Darth Vader. Everybody, you can just see it from a distance and you know immediately what it is, and you can identify.
Well, that's why Spider-Man became the House of Marvel. Like that, whenever you see the logo, before Disney bought him out, like anytime you saw the Marvel logo, there was Spider-Man just sitting in the corner.
Yeah,
he was the icon.
Yeah,
he was the Stan Lee of Marvel.
He was, until Stan Lee was the Stan Lee of Marvel. That exactly. Yeah, he was predated. But and it's fascinating. You have that legacy. But go ahead, Paul.
I was just going to say, it is interesting to think that people that grew up now, not necessarily having read the comic, but watching the cinematic universe and seeing that just explode, they would probably say that Iron Man or Captain America would be the head character that pops into their head, whereas almost everybody that reads the comics, as you say, it's just Spider-Man. Like, he is the one.
Do you guys want to hear a funny thing about Iron Man and Stan Lee and how he created him? So Stan Lee at the time, a lot of the stories Stan Lee created were based around the era that they're in. So you'll find a lot of the stories, so Daredevil and Spider-Man were based on genetic or the chemical spills. That was a big scare of the early times. X-Men Prejudice. And all that stuff. So at the time, you had these big industrial people who were everyone's fighting against the industrialists. And so someone in the offices bet Stan Lee, I bet you can't make an industrialist a popular character. So
that was it.
That was the bet, and that's how he created Iron Man, was on a bet.
That's amazing. It's so funny though. Jesus. It's so funny to think about though that Spider-Man was the number one, was the most popular pre-MCU, but yet he was one of the last assholes to be incorporated in the MCU through licensing. Isn't that weird? He's the guy who really kind of ran the whole thing, and then He's the last one to show up in these fucking movies.
That's all like Marvel making bad decisions years and years ago.
Well, yeah, and that was Stan Lee, because he just was a good guy, and he just wanted to get his shit out there.
Yeah, that was as much of a salesman he was. Like, I still remember one of the articles I remember reading, like how big of a salesman it was when the time Spider-Man got married. He's like, okay, we got to get people to understand this is a huge moment in comics. So he ran into a baseball stadium and recreated the marriage scene on the baseball stadium to match up with the comic.
Wow.
Like, that's how big of a salesman he is. But I think at that same time, like, because he was always trying to see about expanding the medium, expanding comics, he might have and he was big in diversifying and giving his products to other people. But I think that's where things started to, Marvel as a whole, when it started getting into other people's hands, they're like, well, we got to sell this off. Because I think one of the things that led to the downfall is they initially sold the rights to a toy company. And that toy company was like, well, we got to sell these bunch of merchandise. So that's why you sold Secret Wars. Secret Wars comic basically was around, how do we sell a bunch of these toys? And it was successful, but eventually it kind of petered out. And then they end up having to, like, when the sales started, like, backlashing against them, they're like, well, we got to sell off these rights. And then you saw this go here, this go here, this go here. Like, that's why when you see, like, Blade, this is a great Marvel movie. It's like, yep, and that was a totally different company that didn't have Marvel attached to it.
Wow. Yeah, he kind of spread himself a little thin. Of course, Spider-Man made the rounds cinematically until Sam Raimi finally was able to pull it off. But it went to Canon. Almost Canon came very close to making a Spider-Man movie. The Canon group, and they built sets and everything, which is a fascinating story. That they built the sets for Spider-Man, and Albert Pune, who directed a bunch of dumb shit, was going to direct this one. And it fell apart, but the sets that were built were used in the film, I think, Cyborg 2. Either Cyborg or Cyborg 2. One of the Cyborg movies have the sets for Spider-Man. So go figure that. So it came very close, but thank God.
Oh, I thought. Sorry, you just brought up like weird things. I remember reading that Michael Jackson at one time had planned to get the rights to Spider-Man.
And do what with it?
He wanted to play Spider-Man.
Ah, Christ.
He actually went to Stan Lee and talked to him about it. And they're like, well, we'll think about it.
And that should be almost as weird as if Nicolas Cage has got his wish of playing Superman. I mean, it's just,
he did play Ghost Rider, though. He did play a Stan Lee character, right?
Yeah.
Ghost Rider was, well, the less said about that. We haven't flushed those two, but boy, they are flush-worthy.
yes, they are. Although I still enjoyed them. So, there we go.
That's all you do. I'm sure you enjoyed the Fantastic Four films, too, that were all terrible, all three of them. Honestly, if I have to pick one to watch, I would go with that unreleased first one, because at least that was closest to the spirit of the comic, as opposed to the other two.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Nobody wants to admit that. It's like a dirty secret, but everybody's got a copy of that, a bootleg copy somewhere in their DVD collection.
It's weird to think, like, so Fantastic Four, as much as they've been bad movies, we have to recognize, like, the legacy of Stan Lee is built on Fantastic Four.
Really?
Because the Marvel Comics was not a big thing. So, like, we got to keep in mind, like, the only Marvel character that existed that before Marvel was Marvel, because it used to be Timely Comics.
Right.
The only comic characters that existed before then were, Captain America and Namor. They were the only characters that existed before that. And essentially what ended up happening was, Justice League was starting to become a big popular thing for DC Comics. It was right after, because a lot of the comics before the big comic characters that we know today was like a lot of the superhero comics were dying out, because after the war, people were like, well, we don't need superheroes anymore. And then DC's like, why don't we try making superhero teams again? And so at the time, Stan Lee was one of the head creators there. And they said, Stan Lee, we need to create something that's going to be on par with Justice League. And at this time, he was like really burnt out on comics, because he's like, I'm dealing with the Comics Authority. I'm tired of this crap. I'm tired of all this stuff. So Joan told him, like, if you're going to write a comic, write a comic you want to write. So he wrote Fantastic Four, because at the time, this is like common stance now that you would write comics with drama in it. But at the time when he introduced Fantastic Four, that wasn't a thing. You didn't have superheroes that had their identities revealed to the world. You didn't see them working as a family unit. And so he's like, why don't I just write superheroes that actually have human personalities and struggles and realistic problems? So he wrote the Fantastic Four, which one of his like popular characters out of that four was the Thing. You had a guy who got the powers of rocks, but like, my life is destroyed from this. I'm not happy about it. I'm a superhero, but my God, I'm a rock monster. He had to deal with it. So like that was so compelling to people. Like, wow, there's characters with some serious drama, and that was a huge hit for them. And it's so keep in mind, he wrote this at 40. He wrote Fantastic Four at 40.
Oh, really?
And,
wow,
at 40 years old. And the second, so all of his popularity comes from like, it's really crazy because he got into the comics when he was at 20 years old. He worked at Timely Comics, just being a writer for all these like odds and ends stories, and then just through situations of circumstance of attrition, he somehow became the head chief coordinator for the entire company. And so then he's just like, well, if I'm going to write superhero comics again, let's make Fantastic Four. And he was a huge hit. So he's like, all right, well, why do I make another hero? I'll make the Spider-Man character. I wanted to make it because at the time, there were no kid superheroes. You had Robin, who was a sidekick. You had a tons of characters that were sidekicks, but you never had a kid superhero. He's like, well, why don't I do that? And everyone's telling him that will not work. No one will buy that. Then Spider-Man became a huge hit. Then he's like, well, why do I write a Jekyll and Hyde story of Hulk? No one will read that. People went bonkers for it. It's like, yes, we want a creature who's everyone's sad about. Is hitchhiking down the road now for the rest of his life.
Yeah, with the theme music.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
So, am I correct now that the Fantastic Four and X-Men are going to be folded into the MCU now with this Fox deal going through?
And they can be.
Well, I would hope they would be because Fantastic Four hasn't been done justice properly. So it'd be nice to see the MCU finally get these characters correct.
Kevin Feige has confirmed that the plans have been put forward for the X-Men franchise. There has been no word officially about the Fantastic Four franchise.
That's interesting. Yeah, I would assume so. But
I'm currently fan voting for Jonathan Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic because I think he would look fantastic as the guy.
I think that the Fantastic Four would work best as a TV show.
That's okay. I could see that as in like a Netflix 10 episode thing. Yeah, not that we need more of those at this point, but unfortunately, that's where it seems to operate.
Oh, those are going away now.
Yeah, Iron Fist is.
Well, they got rid of two of them, right?
Gone.
Yeah, they killed it too. So I guess I got a slot open. So maybe you're right. Maybe Fantastic Four could work. You know, you might be right on that, Paul. That's not a horrible idea. That's actually pretty good. That might be a better way to go because there's 4 characters, and if you have a 10 like they just did with Haunting a Hill House, if anybody's watched it, I know there's been enough dick sucking about that series, but at least it deals with a whole family. It takes its time over 10 episodes and 10 hours to develop that. So you can do the same thing with Fantastic Four because there's obviously 4 of them. And then explore the dynamics over, a story arc, and you can have Dr. Doom or some other idiot mole man or whatever.
We need a good. See, like for me, I remember like being young and being introduced to the original Fantastic Four movie, and I'm seeing this Dr. Doom, and I was seeing like the comic people like, man, Dr. Doom, like, and I watched him like, what's the big deal about this guy? He's metal. I don't understand why he's a big deal. And then after, in my 20s, I started getting into comics. And I started reading like these really good stories of Dr. Doom, and I started to figure out like, oh, Dr. Doom's like the biggest OP character ever created. He's like ridiculously powerful.
Yeah, and he's been screwed over. And the only decent Dr. Doom was the guy in that first Fantastic Four film. He's the only one that kind of got the spirit of the character. That Julian McMahon and the other guy from that more Josh Trank nonsense. Yeah, nobody knows what the hell to do to get that. But that first guy, whoever that first guy was, got the spirit of Dr. Doom. He's a compelling character. You could do 6 episodes on Netflix on him.
Dr. Doom would be amazing.
Yeah,
because like he's just an a-hole,
right?
But an awesome a-hole.
Well, I would do so if anybody at Netflix is listening, do an inverse of the Fantastic Four. So have the series set around Dr. Doom and have the Fantastic Four be the villains. So you're seeing everything from Doom's point of view.
Are you saying you want to see the Frightful Four?
No. Don't get nuts. What was that? Did they have a chimp? Wasn't there a Fantastic Four cartoon? Am I correct? And there was.
They've had many. There was a Thing TV show where the character had Thing ring, do your thing.
Wait, what's a thing ring? Is that like a cock ring or is that like an actual ring?
He had 2 rings on his middle fingers. He clacked them together and became the Thing.
I got those too. They're in my nightstand. They only come out for special occasions, right, Paul?
Well, hey, you said you'd never talk about that.
Yeah.
in private circles.
I mean, there was some wacky stuff. Is that was it licensing? Because they tried it. There was a robot in one Fantastic Four cartoon, right? Then they have a flying robot with them. Herbie, not the car.
No, the robot. I know what you're talking about. Because they lost the. I remember why they did it because I don't know how they happened, but somehow there was rights issues with the Human Torch, so they had to replace the human.
With a vacuum cleaner that flies.
Yeah.
Oh my god!
It doesn't help that Marvel has 2 Human Torches.
Look, you can keep the guy who stretches, that rock fucking thing, and the girl who goes invisible. But that guy's on fire. He's got to go.
Hide him.
We can get the robot in here now.
No flame on. No,
I would have loved to have been in that meeting for that. Like how that came about. Well, that's depressing though. When you start like, come on, it's really the Fantastic 3, and then the robot from Black Hole.
Yeah, Maximilian. Oh yeah.
No, the other one, the one that floats, the one that looked like R2D2. What the hell was he called? I don't know. That's a big digress. You get the point on that.
But it's just crazy. So you got the Fantastic Four, you got Spider-Man. Think of this, Daredevil. He co-created Daredevil. And have you guys seen the Netflix one? It's amazing.
Patrick, before we start recording, folks, Patrick said he had a full list of all the characters that Stan Lee created. So real rapid fire, Pat, read them all off. Go ahead.
Read them all.
Just go through the list. You can. Right, let's give a recap of what. So just in case anybody's wondering, because there's been a lot of blowback. I'm going to talk about Bill Maher came out. Really.
I'm super pissed about that. I want
to address that, but I want to address first the legacy of Stan Lee, in case you don't know all that he created as a writer. But go ahead, Pat. Just read them. Let's go.
Let's go by category. Spider-Man, he's responsible for creating J. Jonah Jameson, who is based on himself.
Nice.
The Vulture, Dr. Octopus, Sandman, Lizard, Electro, Mysterio, Norman Osborn, Kraven the Hunter, Scorpion, Gwen Stacy, Harry Osborn, Rhino, Mary Jane Watson, Shocker, Prowler. That's just Spider-Man characters. Jesus. Moving on to X-Men, he's responsible for Blob, Toad, Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, Juggernaut, Sentinels, and the original 5 Fantastic Four, which would be Jean Grey, Scott Summers, Hank McCoy, the Beast, Angel, and I'm missing one. I forget. Oh, Iceman. Then the Fantastic Four. So you have Doctor Doom, the Skrulls. He created Galactus.
Wow.
Ronan the Accuser, Annihilus, Franklin Richards, and then he's responsible for the Hulk, Daredevil. Specifically, he created Vanessa. I thought he created Wilson Fisk, but I guess he did not. He created his wife, who's a compelling character, and the ever so popular Daredevil villain, Stiltman.
He's a big one.
He's a big one. He's responsible for Iron Man, specifically Pepper Potts, Edwin, Jarvis, and Whiplash. Wow. Thor, he's responsible for Thor, Jesus. A lot of the prominent figures. He's a co-creator of Doctor Strange.
Wow.
I'm just skipping things now. He's responsible for Black Panther, Inhumans, which in comics they're cool, in the movies and every other adaptation like they've been awful. He's responsible for Ant-Man and Wasp. We'll see miscellaneous characters. He's responsible for Groot.
There you go.
Hey, there we go.
Hawkeye, Wonder Man, Hercules, Peggy Carter, Sharon Carter, Ares, MODOK, Black Knight, Captain Marvel, the original, and Falcon.
I'll forgive him for everything except that Hawkeye guy. And Wonder Man. I wasn't a big fan of Wonder Man. There were some questionable ones, but yeah, that's a brief list. If you can create, honestly, as a writer or an artist, or just create 1 or 2 characters that become iconic. This guy's created what? Like you just named 40, 50 characters.
And how many of them are the most popular movies out there right now?
And that have gone on to become huge box office. Juggernauts.
And also, I don't know if you looked it up. The first comic book debut that he did, he was 19 years old, and it was as a text filler story. Captain America foils the traitor's revenge, which you could probably write a thesis on that title alone. But
that's what I was saying. At 20 years old, he started working at Timely Comics when he was 14, and he just kind of doing stories here and there, or helping out here and there. And he's been working since he was 14 in comics.
Yeah, and
wow.
and he like that one text filler that he wrote that introduced Captain America's shield toss. He's the one that invented that. So.
Wow. So yeah, it's a huge legacy, and now but there's always got to be somebody who shits on it. And I got to circle back to Bill Maher here. Have you read the blog, Paul? Are you familiar with what he wrote?
I've seen highlights. I haven't read the full thing yet. So
I'm still pissed just because I am an avid comic reader, and I'll let you go ahead.
Well, I'm actually gonna read a chunk of this because I don't understand. All right, and I guess you can. Here's this is the other problem here. This is someone who doesn't acknowledge legacy that Mr. Patrick here just went through. And he said this: the guy who created Spider-Man and the Hulk has died. America's in mourning, deep mourning for a man who inspired millions to, I don't know, watch a movie, I guess. Now that's pretty shitty right there. Someone on Reddit posted, I'm so incredibly grateful I lived in a world that included Stan Lee. Personally, I'm grateful I lived in a world that included oxygen and trees, but to each his own. And Paul, that's where you insert my rim shot, but I'm bumped. Now, I have nothing against comic books. I read them now when I was a kid, and I was all out of Hardy Boys. But the assumption everyone had back then, both the adults and the kids, was that comics were for kids. And when you grew up, you moved on to big boy books without the pictures. That sentence right there, I take huge issue with. Because obviously, and then they're saying because adults, so many years later, he's saying that we this is how we regain our youth as we went back to comic books and put more meaning to them as actual literature, and that they actually aren't. Boy. And I see everybody's not happy with this because comic books are literature, folks. Just because they have pictures doesn't mean that there's actual, they're for kids. Every one of us can name a graphic novel that is
Image Comics is all about adult comics. That's the whole premise of their line.
But would you agree that maybe I don't see I'm probably the oldest of this group here. But even when I was a kid, I got into comics more, I guess, in my teen years than when I was a kid. But I read them as a kid. But there was never a point in my life where I said, okay, I'm done with these. I got to move on my life and I got to read Tolstoy. There was never, there was never that dividing okay, I got to be an adult now. And, if it, that connects you to your childhood. And if that keeps, I'm not saying I have to read the juvenile comics and there was Archie comics and all that other stuff, but, comics are legitimate. I know I've had a girlfriend who writes for comics right now. So I've known comic writers and, obviously, I'm in that circle in that sense of having grown up with graphic novels and comics like that. And there's some very adult stuff and they're just as valid as the movies or any other kind of medium that these comic book.
Well, here's the weird thing for me. I didn't get into comics I was 22. I'm turning 29 this week, which is weird. I didn't get into comics till then. And because I avoided it because I felt like there was that stigma. And there's this whole thing you don't read them as an adult. That's just a weird thing to do.
Oh, so you did have that stigma, really?
I did. I had that stigma. I refused to read comics because I didn't know. And I was very fortunate that I just happened to find a whole bunch of Spider-Man comics that were literally, it was based on the Ultimate line. So it was literally once the character's killed off, they are dead for real. So I had this whole story of Spider-Man from beginning to death. I was like, all right, if I'm going to read a comic, I'll read this. And I read this one story. Holy crap, it changed my perspective of good storytelling, fun storytelling. For me, it redefined this is what stories could be. I didn't realize I've read a lot of books in my life, but it was the first time I read something wow, this is some pretty innovative stuff I'm seeing here, and this is with a Spider-Man comic. And then through that, I got through the medium of discovering all the, at the time I got into New 52 comics, but those were awful. but
it was a baseline because Bill Maher says it's about adulting. That's what he titled it, adulting. But because of those comics that we read as kids, we have a lot of people are employed by Marvel right now making movies based on those comics. Yes. They are adulting and they're getting paid very well to do that. And so that it is an art form. It is not it is a definite art form that has transcended the page to the screen, and now it's on TV and Netflix if you want. There's all different kind of and video games, right? The Spider-Man video game was a huge hit.
It was so
See,
good.
there you go. So Bill Maher can.
Great Stanley cameo though, by the way.
Oh, see, there you go. And Bill Maher, yeah, he can eat shit, but so I do take a lot of issue with that. I just, he tends to write, and that people, of course, now all the comic people are all up in arms and they want a show canceled. So don't get nuts, folks. It's just Bill Maher just being Bill Maher. We don't have to, burn him at the stake over because he wasn't happy that Stan Lee died.
He could have picked a different. Any other time,
we didn't have to say anything, but
he could have said it any other time, and like it wouldn't have been a big deal. But like he specifically chose this time. Like, okay, I'm just gonna.
But this guy, you're talking about a man who was 95. He devoted his entire life to entertaining an audience.
Yes.
And I'm gonna reiterate this quote from him, and this is my favorite quote, and this directly applies actually to me. I identify with it. I guess Paul does. I used to be embarrassed because I was just a comic book writer while other people were building bridges or going on to medical careers, like Bill Maher was saying. And then I began to realize entertainment is one of the most important things in people's lives. Without it, they might go off the deep end. I feel that if you're able to entertain people, you're doing a good thing. So that guy got an entire career and inspired millions of people by entertaining. And if that's not valid, I mean, come on. One guy did that.
One guy did that, but this is talk about the legacy. He created all these characters, and then he just doesn't stop. He goes, okay, I've created these characters. Now I'm going to get these people who are going to come onto these characters and continue to pump out good stories, good compelling stuff. I'm going to continue to sell his product and then continue to sell himself. Like you were talking about the entertainment. He lived to entertain people, and that's what people found so endearing about him to the day he started, to the day he died. He was just very much a showman, but not just a showman. He was a showman with a lot of heart to him, I felt.
Yes, and well, it didn't always translate. Now there was, I don't know if you guys remembered Who Wants to Be a Superhero. Did you guys?
Yeah, I'm aware of that.
I'm friends with one of the contestants in that first season.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the girl who played Creature. She's a dancer named Tanya Kay, a really wonderful woman. I've known her for years. But she even said when she was working with them, he was the real deal. He was genuine and kind and thoughtful and funny and charisma. There's no bad words about the guy. And like you just said, he was entertaining himself. He knew how to entertain as well as through his work and in person. And that's an incredible feat. Now, like I said, I entertain through my show, but I might be an asshole in real life. That's a hard thing to keep your work and your real life on that same path, on that same level, for so long that he did, like I said, and he could have checked out at any time. He was done a couple times. He got into a lot of legal trouble. He had a lot of failures in the later part of with the internet media thing. There was a lot of failures. He could have just hung it up, but he never did. That son of a bitch was touring right up to the end. Yes, and that says a lot to character and what people can do and what they can achieve, I guess.
It's a lot to say for a man who's just like, all right, the cards are down, but does it mean I stop? No.
He never stopped. The guy never stopped. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think one thing that really showed just how much fun he had and how much he enjoyed it was all of his cameos in the MCU. Because he just kept going. He kept playing all these different characters, and he was clearly having a ball in every single one of them. Do any of you have a favorite cameo of his in them?
That's a great question. What do you got, Patrick? Yeah, that's a... Oof.
I'm always
really funny ones, but
I'm gonna be always a big fan of him with the Watchers and Guardians of the Galaxy 2, just because like for me as a comic fan, like the Watchers are a big deal, and he's just in there like, guys, I got a story to tell you. Like the Watchers are these big guys who watch everything in the universe, and they're like, we gotta get away from this dude.
Well, that was the prevailing theme for a while in fandom, that he was a Watcher, and then they basically just were like, okay, yes, he is. And so that's pretty much canon now.
That's why it was funny to me, because this is like, even he could take off the Watchers. So he's like, okay, we got to get away from Stan.
Yeah,
Stan, we love you, but old man stories have got to go. You got to go take a nap now.
Great thing about him, he did a million cameos, a million films. These ones laid out, but every time he showed up on screen, it gets a reaction from the audience, and I think that's a testament. Every time, every movie I sat through, when he pops up, there's always a chuckle or some clapping or something like that. So that nobody ever got tired of it. I mean, except for maybe me, I get a little curmudgeon in the restroom after a while. You're like, all right, Stanley's here. But the fact is, the audience always reacted to that, regardless of what was happening on screen with the movie.
Because
and the story.
He's Grandpa Stan Lee.
Right, there you go. Yeah, it's just like that knee jerk. Yeah.
He always, I feel like, talk about the legacy. Like he helped to just for a face alone, just like the presence of a man. It's like, here's a man I don't know how to phrase it, just for someone who's grown into understanding who he was. Like I don't know, he gives you that sense of like peace about the product you're saying. Like Stan Lee's right there. I'm okay right now. It could be a terrible movie, but it's Stan.
Well, also, do you know that there's no other face of comics. He literally was of all comics. He's the face of comics.
He is truly the face.
Just like Walt Disney, he pioneered an entire industry that today remains unmatched. And I think that's incredible. There's no other. You can't. Not the DC doesn't have anybody. There's no other face of comics. He represents all of comics, not just Marvel. All of it. And just like Walt Disney represents, theme park industry, and all the animation. So there's very few people in the world where they're that iconic. I mean, Steve Jobs, I guess, you can go down the list, but for comics, it's just him. That's it. I mean, technology has a couple. Jeff, we've got Steve Jobs, we got Jeff Bezos. Technology has a bunch of people. Film has a bunch of people. There's all these other industries, but there's only one comic guy, and this was it. he literally was it. He started and ended with him. So all the other industry, all DC Comics and Image, and all these ones that have spurned out of us are all, grateful to him for his pimping, because when he pimped, himself.
Well, that's what Kirkman's doing now. Robert Kirkman's like, okay, he's built his whole franchise off of the Walking Dead and whatever other show he's spinning off, but it's becoming like Kirkman stuff. Mark Miller, there's people now who's recognized, like, if I become the face of my product, people recognize me over what, like, he was a big pioneer of so a lot of people like will follow in my comic circles, they'll follow characters or they'll follow writers. And It's interesting enough, I feel like Stan Lee was one of the first ones who's like, I'm writing it, and people are like, I'll read whatever he's writing. And a lot of like the comic readers or comics I read now, I follow the writer, and those writers have like the most successful ones are the ones who can market themselves much like Stan Lee. He's like, hey guys, I'm around, I'm here. Like he very much with his fan base, their fan base, so they're prominent, they're present. You know who they are. It's like, I know you. You've written these good comics, and you have a presence outside of the comics. I want to keep following you.
There's Gail Simone is one that comes to mind.
Yeah, Gail Simone.
Yeah. I met Gail Simone in person. I thanked her for her tweets, because I don't read as many of her stories, but I read her Twitter tweet all the time, and she's fascinating on Twitter. And I always thought she's very interesting. So yeah, when I saw her, I was like, you don't have to sign that, but I just want to thank you for tweeting.
Oh yeah, but it's
and she's very sweet about it. Yeah, but you start to know the writers, and like you said, and you get behind them and their stories. But he did that. He made sure to give credit where they did it. Yeah, and he's made So it's all these other people now that are building their brand around, like you said, just being a writer. I mean, there's a lot of artists. There's a laundry list of artists like Jim Lee and McFarlane. Yeah, we can all go. Everybody's seen the artist. We got it. But it's nice to see the writers. Yeah. So,
Rob Liefeld. Oh, I hate his podcast.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. Some of these guys are. Yeah, McFarlane's not.
But here's the crazy. So when we talk about the legacy, it's amazing how many comic creators he influenced. It always shocked me, like, because speaking of Rob Liefeld, I remember like there was a sad little thing about a year or two ago, like the possible neglect of Stan Lee and the things that he was going through, and it was amazing to see the comic community come together to make sure that Stan Lee was okay, because like he kind of just fell off the map for for 4 or 5 months. And I remember it was like Rob Liefeld, Kevin Smith, all these people could make a big effort, like, we've had these conversations, we're friends with him, and they made a huge effort to find out, like, Stan Lee, are you okay? Can you please just give me a call? It was this crazy thing. Like he had such a presence that even if you knew he was alive, the fact that he was missing for a minute freaked them all out. Like, Grandpa Stan, you can't be gone. You got to be staying here. We got to make sure you're okay.
Yeah. I think Kevin Smith wanted him to come live at his house. That's what Kevin Smith said. He said, yeah, Stan Lee, come and live with me. He didn't give a shit. I think anybody would open their door to Stan Lee. Who's going to say no to Stan Lee? I mean,
but that's how big of a, we're talking about legacy and what these people were like so moved by this one man that they gave them their motivations to be in comics. So like the second they realized that there's possibility that he was neglected or something like that, they rose a whole community of people like, we got to make sure he's all right. Not because we're just being fanboys, because we genuinely care about the man who's like, we want to make sure that he's okay. It was just really cool to see like how when that happened, and then after he did get all that cleared up, he's like, thanks to all my fans who helped me get into a better spot.
Yeah, exactly. And he toured constantly. Like I said, he was always pimping. He's always touring, always doing shows. Like I said, he's been at the MegaCon several times and many other conventions, Comic-Con. He was tireless in terms of his work.
So I remember I was listening to a bunch of people, Twitter and people doing in memoriam, like talking about like the last few visits. Even when he had hundreds of people at his signings, and they were very clear. You get your comic, you go up and you sign, and then you could say hi, and you got to keep going. And he still made I remember a lot of people saying he still tried to make a point of just saying hello, thanks for being a fan.
Yeah,
trying to be very sincere still, even in that like 5 seconds. Like always trying to be the most sincere, real face as he could be.
Well, he was always mobbed. He was like one of the Beatles.
Yeah.
Like, have you ever seen a mob? I mean, you ever watch footage of him at a convention? It's just a mob of people, young and old, from 6 years old all the way up to 60. Beyond.
Yeah. There was a great story that I read about either yesterday or the day before, where one of the artists that were heavily influenced by him and got the great privilege to work with him for a little bit, he was saying that they were walking in New York and traffic stopped. He literally stopped traffic and everyone got out of their cars and kind of mobbed around him, and he signed stuff for 10 minutes. And the guy said the police came, and what did the police do? They moved him off to one side and then asked for his signature.
And he probably didn't begrudge it at all.
No, yeah, they said he was just smiling, signing anything people were putting in front of him. Yeah, great guy. I mean, and I will kind of steer it back when I was going to say my favorite cameo that I've seen of him, just based off of what it is it's actually in one of the worst films out of all the ones he's been in, which is Spider-Man 3.
No, I know where you're going.
I'll say,
but there's a great cameo.
Yeah, where he does say, I guess one person can make a difference. Enough said.
Oh yeah, that was I saw a clip of that.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm talking about the Amazing Spider-Man where he's the janitor.
No, did they make him a janitor? I didn't see that.
In the Amazing Spider-Man, there's a scene where the Lizard and Spider-Man are fighting, and Stan Lee is the janitor, and he's just kind of walking down the hall. And they're just destroying stuff in the background. But he's got his headphones on, just totally.
No, he's a librarian in that one.
That's right.
Oh, it's a librarian. There's Jesus. But that's a good quote. Even though it's a terrible film, you're right. That is probably one of his best ones, where they give him an important line to say. Yeah, which I think is nice. Yeah.
And then of course, I think the funniest one is definitely where he's delivering the package for Tony Stank.
Oh, is that? And he was Hugh Hefner, right? One of the Iron Man.
Yeah,
actually, Hugh Hefner.
Actually,
he was mistaken for Hefner. He was mistaken.
Yeah,
for Hefner.
That's the thing. In both Iron Man and Iron Man 2, he plays himself, but Tony Stark mistakes him for Hugh Hefner in the first one, and for Larry King in the second.
Oh, that's right. He was Larry King. Yeah. Yeah, I like the Hefner.
Wait, I remember my favorite one now. It's from a Thor movie of all things, if you can believe it. When he decides to have a drinking match with Thor. No, it's Captain America.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'll drink you. And then you see him being carried out. He goes,
yep.
Excelsior.
Yeah. No, you're right. That's a really funny one, too. Yeah, he had a really good sense of humor. He was pretty much game for anything, which is fantastic.
Gosh, what a great catchphrase, too.
Yeah. And it was just great to see him just whenever he's in the films. And something I read a few years ago, which sadly it's going to happen now, is the thing where everyone's going to be going to see these films, and then one day you're going to be watching it in the cinema and you're going to realize something's not right, something's missing, and then the credits will start and you'll see
Stan Lee.
It'll just be in memory of Stan Lee, and you realize this is the time where there's been no cameo.
I don't know how they're gonna do that because I'm sure he filmed the cameo for Avengers 4 next year.
He did.
But I can imagine, like right at the end of it, they will probably have in memory of.
Are they gonna put it there, or because Captain Marvel's out first, or are they gonna put the card there in memory of?
I would like to think that they would do it in the Avengers, just because so many of the characters he created will be in that one.
Okay, all right. Well,
he's not really tied to because like. The thing we have to remember is that he has filmed a ton of cameos. They have just put a bunch of them in the bucket.
Oh, there you go. Okay, yeah. So I think he might be around for a while.
Yeah,
he'll probably pop up for a few more videos, because the second they'll announce like this is the last one we filmed. Like I fully expect.
Well, I think the last one, honestly, I'm sure he did Spider-Man: Far From Home. I'm sure he filmed. I'm thinking that because that's been done filming. So I think he's done that one. So you're going to see him at least Avengers 4, Captain Marvel, and Spider-Man. So the 3 for next year, you're going to see him. After that, I think that's going to be it. But you never know. He may keep popping up, guys.
You know what's really sad, though? Someone pointed this out to me. The only time Stan Lee has cameoed and he met one of his own, or like met Spider-Man, was in Spider-Man 3.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
It's the only time he's ever met Peter Parker in the movies, which is like, damn, what a bad movie to cameo in. But
so weird he didn't meet him in the first one.
I know.
Raimi's first one. That's interesting.
Yeah. But it's the only where like he makes the character.
But there is a deleted scene from the first one where he tried to sell Peter Parker a pair of sunglasses. But yeah,
that's funny. That's funny.
Now, I had to say, I think that I would be fine with either. Let's say they put a CG Stan Lee in, but with no dialogue, like he's
that's
just
a good
in
one.
it.
Yeah, he's in the ride in
Yeah, or the same thing they did with Deadpool 2, where he is graffiti art in it.
Oh yeah, that's brilliant too. He also appears 4 times in the attraction here in Orlando, The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man and Islands of Adventure.
Really?
Yeah, they upgraded the film. They upgraded the film and did new animation, and he cameos 4 times. You have to look for him, but he's in there 4 times. It's great. It's great to see him. So yeah, so if you want to see him live on in CGI form, check out that ride.
But again, comes back to what you said. Like when you see Stan Lee, you're just like,
that's what
Stan
he did.
Lee.
Yeah, to have him in the ride was amazing. Yeah, it's really cool because now you're looking for him like an idiot, but then you see him and you're like, oh shit, that's awesome. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and he was in the Fantastic Four film as well, and apparently
that was a great cameo.
Yeah, that was a good cameo too. Yeah,
and he is a character that he created in that.
Yeah.
He's the mail carrier Willie Lumpkin.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah, he was a mail carrier. Yeah.
But he was just like he was so genuine in that. Like he was having a ball in that one. It looked like to me. It looked like he was always having a ball in most of his cameos. Even in Deadpool, he's like, "Hey, I'm in a strip club."
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, you never saw the guy in a bad movie. You never saw him beating a hooker on the Hollywood Boulevard.
No, but when you saw him, he never looked like he's just like phoning it in. He looks like
he always looked happy to be there. Yeah.
Yeah. Even if the movies were bad, he was never bad. I can't think of one bad Stan Lee cameo.
No, I don't think he's ever done a bad cameo. It's always like a joy to see him when he pops up.
Yeah, I mean, just looking very quickly through some of the list of the cameos, he apparently filmed a cameo for Blade, but was deleted.
Oh my word!
Wow, I put that back in.
Apparently he was a cop that discovers Quinn's burning body at the Vampire Club.
Oh.
Is he in Ghost Rider?
I don't think so. Like looking at the list here, I don't believe he's in that one. That doesn't seem to be.
I want to see Stan Lee with Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, that would have been interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the list here. You've obviously got every MCU. He was in Venom. He was in a bunch of TV shows. He was in X-Men Last Stand, Deadpool, X-Men Apocalypse, Deadpool 2.
Did you guys know that he did cameo in one DC film?
Really?
He did.
Yeah.
Of all the movies he cameoed in the Teen Titans Go movie. And I've never seen the movie, but I've seen the bit. Well, essentially, you see Stan Lee, the cartoon character, just keep popping up in the screens. He's trying to photobomb every one of the scenes. And then finally he pops up and goes, "Hey, kid, it's Stan Lee." And then he's just trying to shill off Marvel because he's like, "Oh, this DC, wrong film."
Oh, that's really funny.
I think that's amazing. They got Stan Lee for that.
Yeah, and apparently...
And they made a bit out of it.
Yeah, and it... that's not the end of it as well, according to this. He shows up again later, stating he doesn't care if it's a DC movie. He just loves making cameos and shouts Excelsior. So,
he was pimping all the time, even in other properties.
Good news for everyone, he has recorded a voiceover for both Ralph Breaks the Internet and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Oh, there you go, folks. That's 2 movies coming up very shortly. Stan Lee is still alive and well.
I'm really excited for Into the Spider-Verse, just because of the
Not
idea
any
of it
spoilers.
and the animation style of it.
Yeah.
I'm so looking forward to that one.
I wouldn't be surprised to see a Stan Lee title card on that one too.
I wouldn't be surprised. I would hope for that one just because Spider-Man is his.
Yeah, it's his baby. They'll probably put a thanks Stan or something like that.
Yeah.
At the end of it.
I wouldn't lie if they just put at the end of it just Excelsior and just left it at that.
They might do that.
I'd probably still like tear up like, oh.
Yeah. No, I'm sure they will acknowledge that in Spider-Verse. I'm sure they're already working on that. Yeah, his legacy will live on, obviously.
Yeah.
For a long time.
No, like now. So I've recently been trying to replay Spider-Man, the game. I beat it once, and they have a new game plus mode on it. And there is a cameo with Stan Lee, and it's basically him. Do you guys mind me spoiling it?
No, go ahead.
I know what it is already. So yeah, you go.
Okay, so like literally, it's so Peter and MJ are not like together, but they decide to have lunch together. And Stan Lee's the clerk at the desk. He's like, "You two were always my favorite couple." And it's so sincere, it's so well done, and when I watched it again I kind of teared up because it's like, oh, for me it's just like, oh, it's Stan, but he's talking about like these two characters that he created, and he was always a big champion for MJ and Peter, because like that was his big thing. He killed off Gwen Stacy, and then he created a character that was helped to console him and to make him better, which was MJ. Because I will always remember, some people know MJ as the character that said, "Face a tiger, you've hit the jackpot."
Right.
But for me, the iconic moment for Stan writing a great scene is after Gwen Stacy's death. He's like still trying to deal with it, and he's telling everyone, "Just get out of my face, get away from me. Don't want to talk to you. Don't want to deal with you." And he even tells MJ to just leave. And the most iconic scene, which everyone will who's read comics will recognize why MJ is such an important character. He tells her to leave. She goes to the door, and she then shuts the door and says no. And that's where the comic ends. And then the next comic is her saying, "You have to deal with your grief, but you cannot do it alone."
That's powerful stuff.
He wrote the death of a character and then helped the character to overcome it. Yes. Man.
Paul, when does this air? When's this going to air?
I'll try and get this out middle of next week.
Oh, middle. Okay, so by that time, folks, you're already gonna miss it. So hopefully on that Black Friday sale last week, you picked up that PlayStation 4 with Spider-Man. It's only $190. Yeah, $200, guys. So hopefully you got that during Black Friday. We're recording this before Black Friday, but Paul's gonna be lazy and put it out now.
Hey,
I don't know what the hell he's doing.
Excuse me. Hang on. I'm talking about the English next week because this is still Sunday, so this is still this week.
Oh, okay. All right, folks. Well, if this does come out by Black Friday, go pick it up. The Walmart has it, Target has it, Best Buy had a ton of them. $199 if you want to play the Spider-Man game. I think it's a good deal.
Yeah, GameStop's
and getting Spider-Man.
I couldn't wait. I tried to go get a physical copy, and I kept going to stores, and like people were sold out of it. So I just said, screw it. I went home and I just bought it off digitally and played it that way.
Wow. Okay, well, if you want a physical copy, we'll be with that system.
Yeah.
Well, that's a nice tribute too. So that's awesome. That he's in there. That's really cool.
It's nice. A great cameo. So
yeah. That I haven't had a chance to play it yet. I know I will, but I haven't had a chance to play it. But I have a YouTuber that I really enjoy watching who will play through some stuff. And when that game came out, he bought it and then filmed himself playing through the entire game within 2 days and then put it out as several episodes. And he's fanboying about it the entire time because Spider-Man is kind of his comic book character that he loves the most. And when that cameo came up, he just stopped talking entirely, which is a big feat for him. And it was just like, they put him in it, yes. And it was just phenomenal to see, and just the impact from that alone. Like, yeah, it's amazing that Stan Lee was able to create so much and keep it going. You know, some people write their stuff and
continue to inspire. That, I think, if anything, his legacy for me, at the end of the day, will be not only with the characters he created, but the inspiration to keep creating. He was always trying to inspire others to be creative, and that's what I will always take away. Like, so many comic writers now are always just going to say, like, you know what? He helped to inspire me to be more creative, to keep pushing against the odds, and to keep being innovative in a medium where people could easily get into the monotony. they were always motivated to do something better because he always reminded them, always try to push the market, push something different, tell the story you want to tell.
Absolutely, that's a good way. Yeah, that's an excellent point. That's an excellent point. He's inspiring. I guess inspiring is what you would.
Yeah,
when you think Stan Lee, inspire whatever creative endeavor, whatever you do, it just even in your job, man. Just to get up and do it and do the best job you can, and keep moving forward in life. I mean, a guy did it till he was 95 years old. We all should be so lucky to be that creative at 95.
To still have our wits end.
I know I'm screwed, but I'm hoping some people out there make it. And kudos to them if they do. And if Stan Lee's the guy to get you through the fucking day, then that's awesome. Sometimes that's all you need. It's just a comic book or a cameo in a film or just a Spider-Man video game, just something to kind of just move you along. He gave that in spades, and he gave it freely of himself. He was very unselfish about that to his fans and his audience. And we should all aspire to be unselfish in our creativity and what we give to the world. So, geez, and don't quote me on that, guys. I'll be in a restroom next week, flushing some piece of shit. So don't get used to this. Have a moment of clarity.
I think if anything, I know I'm fully expecting like there's going to be some expose and they're going to pull up some things, but I still think the legacy he left behind is, no matter what, is going to be bigger than whatever bad decisions.
I don't know if they're going to dig up a lot on that. I don't think there's a lot of, unless like when his wife died, he got a couple hookers and just had at it, which I wouldn't blame him for that. But I don't think there's going to be a lot of dirt. I think there's like some other actors passed away that you can't really. I don't think that you can say anything bad about him. And like you said, if there is something, it's very minor and it's going to be overshadowed by his legacy. His legacy is just too big, guys. He wasn't an asshole. If he was an asshole and legacy, that'd be different. But he really wasn't. He was the real deal. Everybody I've talked to have dealt with the guy. Always said he was real and genuine. He wasn't a jackass behind the curtain or the cameras were off or anything like that. You never heard anything like that. He was giving and real and genuine, and that's the most we can hope to be. I mean, and still be a public figure.
Yeah,
very hard to do in this day and age, especially in this day and age. But he did it. He did it to his death. So God bless him for that.
He did.
Yeah.
Oh man.
And I can't really think of a better way to finish that. Honestly, it's just. Did anyone got any final thoughts really on Stan the Man, or should we?
The Man. I want his sideburns and his 70s look.
Don't forget his sunglasses.
Oh yeah, I gotta have the sunglasses too.
Yeah, really,
and
the hooker, very Burt Reynolds-esque.
He did, yeah, it was very Burt. Yeah, that's what.
Burt Reynolds with his mustache. His mustache, man.
That's my final thing. When I think of Stan Lee, that's the image I think of. Honestly, it was just a cool, iconic look, and that's the salesman and the promoter and the writer. It's really just he's a writer, guys. You gotta you strip all that away. He's just a guy behind a keyboard, we all are. So that's what I take away. Is just at the very core, he's an inspiring writer.
If I'm gonna take anything away, like my final thought would be just the man who always kept trying to inspire everyone in the medium and outside the medium. He was always just trying to keep people positive and excited. Just for a man to come around and just say Excelsior, such a dumb phrase. I remember the first time I heard Excelsior, like, what kind of phrase is that? To where now, like, I can't help but like get a big grin on my face when I hear Excelsior. Like, what kind of world we live in? Like that stupid phrase inspires hope and imagination. And only one man could do that, the Stan the Man.
Yeah, I can say that watching the MCU, one of my favorite things is always just, okay, who is Stanley going to be this time?
Yeah.
And so it was always fun just seeing that. And even if it was just, like, say, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, he is just a guy talking to...
Oh, he's hitting on a young woman?
Talking to a rather young woman. But yeah, they were always able to get him in. It was always at least just a slight smile whenever you saw him there. So I'm sad that that's going to be gone eventually, but I appreciated it being around, and I'm looking forward to seeing what comes next, just from like other artists picking up his mantle and seeing what they go with in honor of him and in tribute to him. So.
Yeah, you're gonna see a lot of that. My only other hope is that Stan Lee didn't turn out to be another Bill Cosby. That's all I gotta say.
I hope not.
Yeah, let's hope nothing comes up like that.
No, but even
Stan, don't ruin our love of you. Don't Bill Cosby us. But I don't think he will. But
no, I'm still coming away with the idea of at the end of the day, he at 95 years old, the legacy he left behind for kids, generations of adults, all that. No, I don't know many people who can finish that well. We've mentioned it 100 times here, but it's just crazy to me to think at 95 years old he was still out there giving people that smile that everyone hopes for. So when I saw a ton of people, some people are really sad, but I think at the end of the day, more people are just, people get really sad at funerals. I'm seeing more and more people just like, let's just celebrate a man who lived a good and fun life.
Yeah, go read a comic. You want to celebrate him? Go read a comic.
Go read a comic.
That's what he said. Yeah, go read a comic. Just you don't even have to watch anything. Don't forget the movies. You've seen them all. Go pick up a comic, guys. There's a lot of great stories out there, and they are for adults. So don't believe that asshole Bill Maher. There's a lot of great work out there. Go read a comic.
There's some great stuff out there.
Prove Bill wrong.
And let's take it from a guy who came into it at 22. And I'm like, I don't know about this. Reading. There are some phenomenal stories. I still remember reading, of all things, a Fantastic Four comic by Jonathan Hickman. I read it was 60 plus issues. I read it all the way to the end, and I remember turning the last page, and I was bawling my eyes out for how beautiful the story was. I've never been moved by anything in my life. I've read some stories that kind of stirred me. This story brought me to tears with how beautiful and emotional the storytelling was. It was amazing, and that was from a comic.
Yeah, and one thing that I would say people can probably look for, and I think will be interesting to see, is there's going to be an issue of Deadpool coming out, which will be the issue that they write after Stan Lee died. And Deadpool will be the only character that knows that Stan Lee has died. So they're going to do something. There's no way they won't. So,
are you sure? I don't think I heard anything about
that. I don't necessarily mean it'll be a big page spread, but they're clearly going to have Deadpool comment on something about Stan Lee. I think so. And I think it'll just be a little thing, but it'll be something that'll be kind of cool. So
I wouldn't put it past Scott Young. Scott Young is the current writer on Deadpool. It's like I can imagine doing something like that.
Again, like I said, it'll be interesting to see just all the things that come up now, like all those little things that maybe artists were like, well, I kind of want to do this, but I don't know. And now that Stan Lee has died, they're going to be like, you know what, I'm going to do this now. So yeah, I think it'll be. Sorry,
it's funny you brought up Deadpool and Stan Lee. Apparently, I was looking up news because I wanted to see if you were right about it. And apparently, there's this huge petition I just found about people who want the Stan Lee cameos to be replaced by Deadpool, which I kind of want to see that.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Yeah, they want him to be replaced by Deadpool in his suit with the glasses and a fake moustache.
That's the moustache.
Yeah, I'm all for that. That's awesome, actually. That would be a nice tribute.
Yeah. And yeah, definitely Ryan Reynolds doing it as well.
Yes,
of course.
I'd be up for that.
I think we better leave it there then. So, yeah, again, thanks guys for coming on and doing this. It was really
Thank
cool.
you. Thanks, awesome.
No problem. And those of you wondering, yes, the next episode will not be a tribute to someone else that has died. We will not be keeping it morbid here. I mean, unless you guys enjoy this, in which case, we'll just scour the obituaries every single week. I don't know. But with all of this being said, thanks for joining us. And I've been Paul.
I've been Pat.
I've been Honor.
And see you next time. Bye.
Excelsior.
Always one.
Always one.
In case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Hang on a minute, lads. I've got a great idea.
Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.